All right. I'll get it started here. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Well, another year coming to a close, and that means we're getting closer to winter. So it's time for Fox 5's winter weather outlook coming up for the 2023-2024 season. This year really went by rather quickly, didn't it? Now, of course, anything I'm telling you here, you can read. The full forecast is going to be on our website, fox5dc.com. But, you know, if we're on television for you, I get 2 to 3 minutes to try and throw everything at you. That took a lot of research behind the scenes. So we're just going to take our time here with you on the web and show you exactly why we think this winter will end up like we think it will. You'll see here in just a moment. So let's go through some statistics for you. Average snowfall here in D.C. It's actually come down over the last 10 years. So every 10 years, National Weather Service updates what we call our normals or our averages. Our average snowfall here in D.C. used to be over 15 inches. Now, on the 30-year average, 1991 to 2020, we're down to 13.8 inches of snow typically each and every season. Now, last winter was another winter that wasn't. I'll step out of the way. Last winter's total here in D.C., not even half an inch. We only got measurable snow on one day last year. That was it. So snow lovers have been sort of starved here over the last few winters. In fact, we look back to the last 5 winters. Some good days mixed in for those that did enjoy the snow. Had a rough commute there in January of 2022, 13.2. Most of that fell on one day there in early January, just after the new year. And then back in 2018, 2019, good, decent winter. I believe that was 1 or 2 storms that dropped 16.9 inches throughout that winter. But a lot of low numbers here. Remember, our average 13.4. So 4 of the last 5 winters have featured below normal snowfall here in Washington, D.C. And, you know, we do have a good mix of folks that like their big snows here in Washington. It has been not since January 2016 that we've had what we would call a blizzard here in Washington. It's been quite some time. So let's get you started on what we look at. And the words you hear more than anything else when we talk winter weather are either La Niña or El Niño. So what is that and why does it matter so much here in D.C.? So we go down to the equator here in the Pacific Ocean and we look at what the water temperatures are doing. And we look so much at water temperatures because they don't change as fast as the temperatures over the land masses do. So water temperatures, not that they stay consistent all winter long, but they're less susceptible to change than elsewhere across the globe. And this region in particular, since weather in the northern hemisphere always moves west to east, at least at the upper levels, we do look off to our south and our west to see what the waters there are doing and how it could influence the pattern, what we call downstream, farther to the east. Last 3 years, or the better part of the last 4 years actually here in D.C., well, across the northern hemisphere, we have been dealing with a La Niña that is colder than normal waters down the Pacific Ocean. And these winters, while they can occasionally give us an outlier that is a decent snowfall winter, more often than not, they are not very good for snow here in D.C. And certainly, as we mentioned before, 4 of the last 5 winters below normal snow. Now, we're flipping that around. We're getting an El Niño that is warmer than normal waters down across that same region. And in fact, let's go ahead and we'll show you. This is a live look at what water temperature anomaly, so how it compares to normal. And we're seeing that big old stripe of above normal waters coming right off the west coast of South America here. And this is that zone you really want to watch. And it actually extends even farther out into the central Pacific for areas that we keep a very close eye on. Now, we'll explain the details on why the more warmth that builds, it's not necessarily a good thing for getting cold around here during wintertime. However, I'll take you out to the Central Pacific here and we're watching this area very closely because this area right here in the middle is a very important area for the potential for snowfall here, and we'll discuss why coming up in just a little bit. So how does El Niño sort of influence our pattern? Well, during the winter time, we mostly watch 2 jet streams. There's the polar jet stream up here, hangs out around the polar region. It's always there, even during the summertime, but during the summer, it's much weaker and much farther to the north, but it starts coming down during the winter time, and that's why the cold gets a little bit more extreme around here. And then the most important thing for snow lovers, we watch what we call the subtropical jet, which is is another stream of upper level winds focused down to the south. And this is the guy that brings the moisture. So you need these two to interact with each other if you want the snows. Now, during a El Nino year, and specifically during what we think will be a moderate to likely a strong El Nino this year here in the DC region, what happens is this subtropical jet stream gets sort of supercharged, and it can get a little more intense, and it taps into some of the very warm Gulf of Mexico waters. You know, even in the winter, you go down to Florida, you go down to Louisiana, there's still a decent amount of warmth down there. Folks are still in shorts and t-shirts, even into December in some parts of that region. So that subtropical jet can tap into some of that very warm Gulf water, that warm south, and since it's more intense during a strong El Nino, it can really bring up not just moisture, but also a lot of warm air with it. So just because it's an El Nino year doesn't necessarily mean we're leaning in the colder direction, because the stronger this jet is, the more it can overpower the polar jet, and then we're dealing with more warm temperatures as opposed to cold temperatures. Now, again, we mentioned it brings up the moisture, and that makes it at least more likely that we do see storms. Does that necessarily mean snowstorms? No. In fact, more often than not, they are not snowstorms. They're more rain versus snow, but all it sometimes takes is one, and you'll see that in the statistics coming up here in just a little bit. There's your polar jet stream off to the north. A lot of cold air, of course, comes down from the Arctic, and then it's all about how much can you get this guy to move throughout the winter. It's never stagnant. It's going up, it's going back, and how far south it comes when it comes down from the north there will give us the potential for some storminess around here. Something we'll definitely watch, how the pattern sets up to the west. This is sort of an ideal pattern you want. You want high pressure building in over western Canada and across the northern Rockies here, and you want some storminess going across the American Southwest, because what that does is it buckles the polar jet, allowing it to dip a little farther here in the east, and then the storminess that moves into the southeast has to go around this high, and as it shifts itself from west to east across the country, that buckles the subtropical jet. And when you have the polar jet and the subtropical jet, they meet each other, you have the supplier of cold air, the supplier of warm, moist air as well. They combine. What do you get? Well, you have the recipe for pretty big snowstorms here in DC. Never a guarantee in wintertime. It just isn't. But that's what we're at least looking for. And that is a little bit more likely in an El Nino year as opposed to what we have been in the past several years with that La Nina. So other things we watch, and this is where I'm going to get all fancy with the terminology on you. This is called the PDO pattern, Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Not going to bother you too much. Just know that when water is in this vicinity, like warm waters here in the middle North Atlantic, surrounded by cold water and almost like a horseshoe formation, that is not usually the best phase for us for getting cold air here in the east. So El Nino may bring it from time to time, but that specific pattern likes this kind of organization to the wintertime temperatures. It likes the warm in the southeast. It likes the cold in the northwest. So they're going to fight each other. Again, there's all these features atmospherically that are sort of going to tug and pull on our winter forecast, and it's just all about getting that perfect combination for just a brief period of time to try and give us some snow. Water temperatures across the North Atlantic extremely warm as well. This actually could help us out if you like cold and snow in DC, though, because it favors a lot of what we call upper level blocks near Greenland. And when you hear us talking about this winter, that just means that what this is doing, if it blocks up here, it's pushing that jet stream down to the south, and then we're a little bit more favored for cold. So you have some features saying, hey, it's going to be a warm winter, and some features saying periodically we could get some waves of decent cold around here, and it's all about trying to get that combo together that would allow us to get a snowstorm or two. So as we look at El Ninos over the last few years, this is a very long, big, complicated graph, but simplify it for yourself. This is all the El Ninos, La Ninas since the year 2000. The El Ninos are in red, and you can see there are only 2 cases there where we did not get above normal snowfall during an El Niño winter. Again, this goes back the last 23 years here in D.C. Notice all the La Niñas. We've had a lot more of those compared to El Niños. And notice how many of those are just below normal snowfall years. We've had a lot of them here since the turn of the century in the D.C. region. Now, we'll focus a little bit because we told you, we think this is going to be a strong, what we call a strong El Niño. And the most important thing, or the one thing that a strong El Niño certainly tells us, is that it's more likely than not to be a warm winter. The average temperatures during historically strong El Niños, you see average winter temp here in D.C., a little over 39 degrees. We've had a lot of them, especially those recent ones. The last few strong El Niños, 2015, 2016, that year might sound familiar to you, but if you certainly remember the blizzard, but you might not remember the rest of the winter was extremely warm. One of the warmest Februaries we've ever had here in the D.C. region with that winter. 42-degree average temperature. Back in 97, 98, we got almost no snow. Temperatures well above 40 for an average. So warm winter, we think more likely because of the strength of El Niño, because we expect it to be strong. Now, when we talk about snowfall during a strong El Niño, these are all the ones we have on record, and it is basically a 50-50 split to whether or not we get above normal, below normal snow. It tends to come in clumps in these types of years. It's not a case of it's cold constantly. We get these little snows that add up. In these types of El Niños, it's either you're hitting a home run or you're striking out in terms of snowfall. Just look at it. Two of the strong El Niño years were 1997, 1998, 1972, 1973. The lowest snow D.C. has ever seen in a winter, at least on record, just 0.1 inches, barely more than a trace here in the D.C. for the entire winter those years. Now, you contrast that, our last very strong El Niño, the blizzard of 2016 here in January, late January of that year, which was one of the biggest snowstorms D.C. has ever seen. And you can see 91, 92, it was a big year for snow, as was the 50s and 60s back many decades ago. But certainly have that chance this year with a stronger subtropical jet stream, with cold expected to periodically come down. All you need is one-week period where they combine, and that could give you that chance for one of those bigger snowstorms. Yes, I will say there is the above-average chance that we could have a blizzard this year here in D.C. So we'll see if we get one. Look, what are these winter weather outlooks at the end of the day? I like saying we're going to the Fox 5 casino here. Everybody's doing the sports bets on their phone around the D.C. region these days, and that's sort of what a winter weather outlook is like. I can take all, just like when you look at, they do the odds and they look at football and they're like, okay, who's injured, who's playing quarterback? I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, who's our quarterback? El Niño's our quarterback here. We got some decent wide receivers. So what's like our winter odds here? And that's sort of how you do it when you do a winter weather forecast. These are just numbers I made up here, but the point being, it's more likely to be a warmer versus a colder winter, but that doesn't mean this can't happen. It's more likely to be a above normal snowfall winter than a below normal snowfall winter, but that doesn't mean it can't, right? Everybody roots for the underdog from time to time, so it doesn't mean upsets don't happen. I can only take the factors that I see, apply it to the forecast, and say, you know what, we do have a decent chance of some snow here in D.C. So we're going 12 to 20 inches. I think we could get most of that out of one storm. If we get two, we'll go above it. You see, there have been El Niño years where there's been 25, 26, 27 inches of snow locally, way more out to the west. So it is a conservative one, I'll give you that, but 12 to 20 inches still above average here in D.C. At the same time, I do think it's going to be a warm winter overall. We're going 1 to 2 degrees above average, which doesn't sound like much, I know, but when you average it over a 3-month period, the entire winter, that does lead to a warmer overall kind of outlook for you. How much snow in your neighborhood? So the I-95, and this map pretty general here across the D.C. region, 12 to 20 inches. Once you get out to Dulles, we're going 18 to 28. That gets you out to about the I-81 corridor, and this is all for the mountains. You know, this isn't clickbait out here with that 60 to 100 inches. There are some ski resorts out this way that average 120 inches of snow a year in Maryland because of their elevation. I think some of the mountain zones could struggle from time to time because I think the snow comes in clumps. So be aware, ski resorts, there might be some below normal snow mixed in out in the mountains to the west. I think you do have to count on some of the bigger events this year to try and get you some decent snows. We'll go 6 to 12 inches down towards southern Maryland, St. Mary's County, 0 to 6 out towards the beaches. Is it a guarantee? Absolutely not, but that's the best forecast we can give you based on all the data we see. Any storms that come our way, of course, we're going to have the latest for you right here, Fox 5 DC, and of course online, fox5dc.com. We'll get you through this winter, whether it's rain, whether it's snow, we got your back. And I'll just cut it there.